Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, my name is Dr. Himanshu Tyagi and I am teaching this course on heat and mass transfer. Till last class we have been looking at boiling and condensation. Today we will continue that topic and let us look first what we have done till previous class. So, we will do a brief recap of the previous lecture in which we have introduced the concept of boiling, which is actually very interesting concept among the heat transfer topics. And as we can see over here, this is a video file which is showing typical boiling taking place perhaps during the cooking process, and this can be water based or oil based. And we also looked at the concept which has come recently is with the help of microwave. So, over there instead of surface boiling, the direct volumetric boiling can also take place, which is an interesting phenomena. And then we will come back to these photographs in just a minute. We started off with looking the simplest form of boiling, which is the pool boiling. So, I think we started off with that, and then today we will continue and look forward towards the flow boiling. So, in pool boiling we looked at the simple equation of boiling over here. So, the most important parameter in boiling is the delta T axis, which is the temperature difference between the solid temperature T s, solid surface temperature, and the saturation temperature of the fluid. So, in case of water, if we are using and then we are doing some cooking, let us say in our kitchen, and the whole pressure is atmospheric. So, at that time we can take T saturation temperature equal to 100 degree, and if our pan in which I am heating the water, that surface is let us say 110 degree. So, we get a delta T of about 10 degrees. So, that is how we have looked at this delta T over here, and I think I gave that example of water being at 1 atmospheric. Then we started to look into two different type of pool boiling regime. One is the subcooled boiling, in which the bulk temperature as shown over here is less than the saturation temperature. So, ideally the whole fluid should be at 100 degree, but even if the whole pan is not at 100 degree, let us say the bottom portion which gets in contact with the pan surface, that itself becomes 100 degree, and there the phase change would start taking place. So, the boiling will be taking place at the bottom surface, but as the bubbles of water vapor start travelling upwards as shown in the slide over here, then they actually collapse and before reaching the top. And the other case is saturated boiling, which is given on the right hand side over here, where all the bubbles are actually able to reach the top, because the whole fluid is almost at 100 degree centigrade, and then these bubbles they come out from the top as shown with the green arrow, and even interesting phenomena like mist formation may take place. So, that is the part of condensation. We will talk about that little later. Then we spend lot of time on the boiling curve, where we looked at 4 different zones over here, and these are numbered as 1, 2, 3, 4. So, this is where we will continue today's lecture as well, and we looked at the natural convection boiling zone number 1 over here. Then we looked at nucleate boiling, which is the critical boiling. Then we looked at the transition boiling, and finally, we looked at the film boiling, which is number 4. And we looked at the concept of nucleate boiling shown with the help of these two images in the bottom over here, two surfaces A and B. The contrast which I wanted to show over here was that in surface B, there are more zones for nucleation. So, I think we can see these are 4 zones for nucleation. I can write them 1, 2, 3, 4 compared to just 1 zone for nucleation over here. So, the boiling is more enhanced in this particular case B, and we can say in one way that if we make a smooth surface rough, then the amount of boiling actually enhances, and that leads to better heat transfer, and that is very favorable. The only trouble is to keep the surface rough for long period of time, because we have a rough surface to begin with, we get very good results, but later on that surface tend to become because of wear and tear and other issues, it becomes smoothened out and then the characteristic goes down. So, this is challenge in front of scientists and engineers, how to maintain a permanently rough surface. That is very important. Then very important phenomena we talked about is the Leidenfrost point, which is given as the this green dot over here. I can draw a red dot on top of that, where the heat flux becomes minimum. So, this is the point where the transition boiling goes towards the film boiling, and over there the example that I gave, we have all seen that if some droplet is dropped on a hot surface, on a hot cooking surface, so instead of just boiling immediately, it actually dances around for a very long period of time, and that Leidenfrost effect, we can see that for few seconds that particular droplet actually moves around, and then we see it disappear. Ideally it should have disappeared immediately, but the rate of heat transfer has become so low because of the resistance which is present over here in the form of the vapor. So, I can draw this resistance zone over here. So, this is providing huge amount of resistance. I can say this is high resistance over here. So, I am showing with green blue arrow over here. So, in all these cases, ideally the liquid should come in contact with the solid surface immediately, and then phase change will take place immediately. Now, we looked at the on the right hand side the concept of critical heat flux, and from there we looked at the concept of burnout as well. So, I think this is where we will continue for today's lecture. So, I will start a new slide over here, and before I do that, very briefly I would like to go and look at those photographic images that were shown earlier. So, if we go to slide 4 over here. So, these are actual photographs taken by Professor Westwater from UIUC, and it shows very clearly two boiling regimes for a cylindrical type of wire heater. So, that geometry is shown over here. So, this is the cylindrical wire heater, and it can boiling can take place in two fashions as shown in this photograph. The first one is the nucleate boiling, in which we can see there are a lot of bubbles, individual bubbles separate from one another, shown with these green circles and the orange circles which I drew yesterday. So, these are the visible form of those water vapor bubbles which have taken place after boiling has taken place. So, those liquid has gone inside the nucleate zone, then it has got converted into vapor, and then that vapor is gradually rising in the form of bubbles. When this process takes place so rapidly that even if there is one bubble, another bubble already there. So, some sort of a film gets formed between, which comes between the liquid and the solid surface, which is actually shown in the bottom figure over here. So, if I can use this green cursor, then I can show over here this particular zone. We can clearly see over here that a continuous film of water vapor has formed over there, which is actually inhibiting the liquid to reach the solid surface and preventing it to get to change its phase. In other words, what is happening is that particular liquid is facing some sort of a resistance. Instead of getting directly in contact with the solid surface, it is now actually facing that resistance of a water vapor layer, which is coming between it and the solid surface. And naturally, if some resistance is there, then we can clearly see that the heat flux would be lower, which is what is shown over here, that even at, so if we focus on film boiling for a minute, so even at very high delta T's, the amount of Q prime, Q double prime, which is this particular zone, it is actually very less. Only when this delta T has become very large, so we can see it has become almost close to 1000. Only at that point that the Q value has again increased, and in this particular area it is primarily because of radiative heat transfer. Excuse me. Okay. Now, we what to do is continue yesterday's discussion about the critical heat flux point, which is the peak point, and what happens during the burnout. So, we will start that analysis over here. So, some part I will draw which we have already looked at yesterday. So, this is the Q dot double prime heat flux, and the units are watts per meter square. This is my y axis. On the x axis I have delta T axis. So, we can see our plot was looking something like this. Now, what happens in reality is once we start heating the value, increasing the value of Q double prime, and this is my critical heat flux. So, it goes up till over here. So, I will put an arrow because I am increasing Q prime, then it suddenly jumps from this point to this point and then follows this particular curve over here. And we had a little bit of discussion on this yesterday, and typically we can put some numbers over here. So, I think this is 120 degree centigrade, this could be 600 degree centigrade. So, just look at the solid surface. So, T excess is essentially T s minus T saturation, where T saturation I can even write with the green color, because this is kind of a constant. For water at 1 atmospheric, this value is fixed, it is 100 degrees. Now, if I am talking in terms of delta T, I am essentially talking in terms of the surface temperature. So, just imagine that the heating is taking place in such a way that if we have started from point A, let us see we go to point B, this is point C. Then going between point B to point C, it takes place immediately, and the delta T that we see over here is huge. So, I can put arrows over here, this is the direction in which the experiment is progressing. So, let us say we are doing this experiment in our laboratory and there is some sort of a solid surface. It could be a solid flat surface, or it could be a solid wire. And essentially what we are doing is we are increasing the amount of flux which is going through that wire. So, what I am doing is I am increasing the y axis over here. And look how the temperature has jumped from between point B to point C. So, there is a delta T going from 30 degree to 600 degree immediately, and then 600 degree onward, if I still try and increase the heat flux, keep on increasing, then it would become 700, 800 and 900, and at that particular point the heat flux values would also increase, because that is something that is in my hand. Heat flux is something I can control in an experiment by simply increasing the amount of current which is going through that wire, or the amount of heat that I am adding, like let us say through a flame. So, I am increasing the amount of the rate of combustion. Then we are getting this very nice blue curve over here shown with the help of blue arrows, right. Now, let us see what would happen if we do the whole thing in reverse. So, if we draw another curve in which we are doing the whole thing in reverse. What do we mean by that? We will start with very high values of Q double prime, and my original curve I will draw like this. But over here I am starting with point A at this particular point, then I am going to point B, and ultimately I want to reach, let us say this is point H. So, essentially what I am doing this time is I am reducing the amount of heating which is taking place. I am starting off with the highest point, very high heat flux. So, I know that film boiling is taking place and I want to slowly reduce it, then let us see what happens. So, we go from point A, we are decreasing the value of Q, that is what we are doing, then we go reach point B. Then what happens, instead of it going and jumping towards the critical heat flux, it continues to go down over here. So, what it means is that film boiling is still continuing. In the new curve, we can see that from point A to point B to point C, and it will reach to the Leidenfrost point, point D. And if I still reduce the value of Q double prime, so I am over here. So, I have come from this to this to this to this, I am reducing, that is why this arrow is showing like that. Then suddenly it jumps from this point to this point. So, you can see there is this huge jump. So, I can put these arrows over here, and then it goes in this direction further, which means if I can draw these two things combined, when I am doing in the forward direction the amount of heating, it goes to critical heat flux, reaches that particular point and then goes over there. So, this is the combined heat boiling curve. This is I am showing in blue line, but if I am bringing it back on the reverse direction, it will not touch the critical heat flux, and rather it will jump immediately over here, and then it will travel at this particular point. So, even of the starting, I will write this is the starting point, and over here this is my end point. So, I can write E and D somewhere over here. So, even though my starting and end points could be identical for curve 1 and curve 2, one being the forward direction and B being the reverse direction, then you can just see with the help of different colors that the boiling regime, it is actually following different routes. When I am increasing, it is going in one way, when I am reducing, it is going in another way. So, this is a very interesting thing that we are seeing, but irrespective of that, what we are seeing over here is this is the generalized boiling curve. If we are very careful, we will be able to achieve it. So, I am drawing it with green line once again, and the trick for achieving it is as soon as we reach critical heat flux and the temperature starts to increase any further, then we have to start reducing our Q prime once again. So, first we increase the value of heat flux, then we decrease the value of heat flux, and then we start to increase it again. So, over here experiments have to be done very carefully in order to follow this green line or the boiling curve very nicely. So, I think the only thing which I want to add over here is that typical values of critical heat flux, let us say for the case of water, we can say is about 10 to the power 6 watts per meter square. Okay. Typically. So, I think this is what I wrote last time also over here, which means based on this relationship, which I can write over here like this, that Q double prime is equal to H into delta T. At the critical heat flux, at that point I can estimate the value of H using this particular relationship. So, as H turns out to be Q double prime divided by delta T, and I put these values in. So, Q double prime is of the order of 10 to the power 6, delta T I can say is of the order of 30. Then H values we are getting are very high. So, it is of the order of 33,000 watts per meter Kelvin. So, I think we all remember that we have done examples for calculation of H in various topics. We started off with forced convection external flow, forced convection internal flow, then we looked at Nusselt number as well, natural convection as well. So, you remember one example we did in natural convection, where we wanted to figure out what is the amount of cooling which is taking place through this particular vertical mobile phone, and we have assumed that it is hot, the air around it is very cold. So, just by natural circulation it will cool itself by natural convection, and if I remember correctly, at that point the value of H had turned out to be just 5. So, it was 5 watts per meter square Kelvin. Just compare that number with the amount of H that we are getting for the case of boiling. So, it is 5 versus 33,000. So, it is huge. That is why that for condensation also we will figure out H values are even higher over there. It can become equal to 2 lakh watts per meter square Kelvin. So, wherever phase change is taking place, we have to expect H value should be very high, and this thing comes out very nicely when we try to connect it with the next topic that we will look at, because if you remember, we started off with two type of boiling regimes. One was the pool boiling. Let me highlight it with red color over here. Now, let us go ahead and look at flow boiling as well. So, once we are considering flow boiling, let me draw what do we mean by flow boiling. So, all this discussion that we have done till now for pool boiling is essentially something like this. So, we take a stationary fluid and start heating it from bottom, and this configuration, it could be like a pan in a kitchen or some experiment that we are doing in the lab. So, essentially we are saying that the bulk velocity in this particular case is 0. We do allow that inside that particular pan, inside the fluid, some sort of motion or some sort of a velocity profile can be there. So, I can draw certain velocity profile. So, over here it goes down, here it is actually some eddies are there, maybe it is coming down over here. So, in local velocities can be there, but if I take the average of all the velocities, it will come out to be 0. That is why this is 0 meters per second. Now, let us consider a case where actually bulk velocity is non-zero. So, it could be a positive number in the x direction or a negative number depending on which direction the flow is. So, what are some examples in which bulk flow is taking place? So, bulk flow is taking place over here, it is a pipe in which some sort of a fluid is flowing, right. I am standing in front of you, I am breathing in, the air is going in. So, the bulk velocity is actually in that particular direction. I hold my breath inside, then I exhale, the air actually comes out, the whole thing goes outside. So, periodically it is a bulk velocity, some bulk motion is taking place, right. Then wind is blowing on a particular day, let us say I am standing in a cricket stadium. So, from left side to right side huge amount of wind is blowing. So, in that case people can say that there is a bulk flow which is taking place. So, in all these cases we can consider, but we will start off with a very simple case. Let us start off with the simple case for flow taking place inside a pipe. So, this is the pipe, let me draw a long pipe over here. And what we expect is that because boiling has to take place, let us choose parameters in such a way. So, the fluid that I am choosing is water. So, water is going to enter this particular pipe on the left hand side and boiling is going to take place. So, what should come out from the right hand side? So, it has to be vapor. So, no liquid should come out from the right hand side. Then we can say that full boiling has taken place inside this pipe. Can students think of scenarios in which they have seen in a pipe that some liquid actually is going, or saturated liquid, and some saturated vapor or maybe superheated vapor is actually coming out from the other side? So, we all have as the mechanical engineers, we all have studied power plants and we have also looked at refrigeration cycles. So, I will just give a hint over there, that are there some cases over there that phase change is taking place? So, the answer is yes. So, I can draw a very quick TS diagram over here. Those who are not familiar may actually revise this particular thing. So, this is the temperature versus entropy diagram. So, the first thing that we do in case of steam or water is we draw the dome over here. So, let us say in power plants the operating pressure is very high. I could be operating as let us say 150 bar, and I want to take the fluid, that high pressure liquid water, from point A to point B. Why do I want to heat it up? Because after point B, I am going to expand it in the turbine to get work output from that. So, if the turbine is connected to generator, it will produce AC current, with the help of which all this lighting and air conditioning is taking place inside this room. So, let us say where is the phase change portion in this particular curve. So, I can say that I have drawn A to B, and then I can write over here, this is point C, this is point D. So, A to C, so the whole process is a constant pressure heat addition. So, it is a heating taking place at constant pressure. From A to C, it is the single phase. So, we are heating liquid water from low temperature to high temperature. From D to B also it is single phase, because I am heating superheated steam which was saturated and then making it very, very high superheat. It is from C to D, which I can mark in the blue color over here, that actually phase change is taking place. So, technically we can write that the quality at point C was 0, the quality at point D will become 1. And I think thermodynamic engineers remember immediately that it is the ratio of the mf divided by total mass. So, quality 1 essentially means that 100% vapor is there, and quality 0 means that 100% liquid is there, and that is what I want to do inside this particular pipe. So, let us say I am heating these pipes from all the sides. I am heating this pipe in such a way that water enters at state C over here, like I have shown over here. So, I will mark it as state C, and by state C I mean the quality over there is 0, it is pure liquid, and it comes out at state D over here, and over here I can write x d equals to 1, which means it is pure vapor, there is no liquid over there. Now, let us start over here. So, liquid I will show in blue color over here. So, let us say liquid is entering, and then lot of things will happen over here. This whole is the example of flow boiling. So, I will write on top that we are looking at flow boiling. Maybe what I will do is erase this part over here, because pool boiling we have already looked at. So, when we are looking in flow boiling, Essentially what we are going to see is that there are different regimes which take place inside the flow boiling, and it is very complicated compared to pool boiling, because in pool boiling the whole thing was stationary. So, let us try and see what exactly is going on over here. So, we will have over here, let me mark the different zones. So, this is the first zone over here, then there is the second zone, then there is a third zone, then there is a long fourth zone, then fifth, and then sixth, and then the last one. So, this zone we have already studied, which is zone number 1 over here. I will write it as zone number 1, and this is simply what type of heating is taking place over here. This is forced convection, and this is for the liquid. So, this zone 1 which we have shown is kind of like this zone over here. You can see on the black color on the TS diagram, this I can say is my zone 1. Because why am I calling it as zone 1? Because there is pure liquid, it is just being heated from the wall, right. And this is something we have already studied in the lecture on forced convection. It is just a single phase liquid or oil or anything which is going. So, we can calculate Nusselt number, based on that correlation we can figure out value of H. The same thing is happening over here. So, let us say vapor I can represent with green color over here. So, here it is pure vapor. So, this is pure vapor, and still I am heating it, which means here again also maybe I will call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, zone 7 I will call it over here. So, this zone 7 also is pure forced convection, is not it? How am I calling it pure forced convection? Because there it is just the vapor, just the gas which is actually flowing, and this is type of examples we have also done in forced convection class, where we have looked at some sort of heating which is taking place for a gas which is actually flowing, and then we can very easily figure out based on Reynolds number, knowing whether it is laminar flow or turbulent, what is the Nusselt number over there. So, 1 and 7 is very easy to do. Now comes the difficult part, looking at zone 2, zone 3, 4, 5 and 6. So, let us start seeing, let us start imagining what should happen in zone 2. So, in zone 1 full liquid is coming, I have heated it, perhaps it has reached that particular point that the whole liquid is at the saturation temperature. So, we have reached this state C over here. So, I will write state C over here. Now, what is going to happen, that some sort of bubbles will be formed. Why? Because nucleation sites will be there. So, let us say nucleation sites are here and here and here. So, very small bubbles, small not in size, but small in number. So, few bubbles will be present over here, but predominantly the flow will still be liquid. So, I am showing it with the green, the blue lines over here, and we will call this whole zone as the bubbly flow. Okay. Because very few amount of bubbles of water vapor are present over here, because the fluid has not got time to actually change phase. When it reaches zone number 3, there substantial amount of bubbles will be formed. So, maybe I will show it with green color. So, lot of bubbles will be here, huge amount, but they are still separate from one another. What it means that all this is liquid over here, but this liquid has huge amount of bubbles inside it. And where have all these bubbles come from? In zone 3, if I ask the student that please tell me where have all these bubbles come from? So, all of them have come from this surface, from here, from here, from here, is not it? And all of them, they have come toward the middle over here. They are huge in number, but not so much that they can start to coalesce with one another. That will happen in zone 4. But before we go to zone 4, let me also write the name over here. So, this is called as the slug flow. By the time it has reached to zone number 4, these bubble number have become so large that they kind of form some sort of a zone over here in the middle, which means they have become so much that they actually push all the liquid towards the site. So, the liquid is reached towards the wall. By the way, I have not put arrows over here, but I can put black arrow. What is the direction of bulk flow? Bulk flow is in this direction. If I put the x axis like this, So, bulk flow is in the positive x direction. Local flow can take up and down, but the bulk flow is in the positive x direction. Please remember this point. So, up till the end the bulk flow is in the positive x direction, because we might have given some sort of pressure gradient. So, we have given some pressure gradient over here, some constant C1 value we have given by putting a pump or a blower, which means coming back to the annular flow, this we will write as annular flow. Why are we calling it annular flow? You remember what is annular flow. If I have two tubes, one inside the another like this, and let us say the flow is taking place in this region, then we call it is the annular flow. This is the annulus region. So, when flow is taking place in this region, I am showing with the orange hashed line, this is the annular flow, is not it? And the same thing we are seeing in this particular diagram as well, that liquid water shown with the blue color, is not it only flowing in the annular zone? Yes. And what is here inside the middle? I have to draw with green color, because all this is now dotted over here. This is the water vapor. It has become so much water vapor over here that all these bubbles which were there in the bubbly flow, very small, slug flow, large number of bubbles, by the time they reach this annular flow region, all these bubbles, they have formed sort of a majority, they have come together, coalesced together, they have formed a zone in between, right. So, the actual pipe flow is now taking place because of the water vapor, and the liquid which was the dominant one earlier, it has been pushed towards the surrounding. So, in the annular region it has been pushed over there. Let me do over here. So, this is the very important region, okay. And maybe what I want to do is, I want to create some space over here. Maybe what I will do is I will erase this part. So, here TS diagram I am erasing. The reason for that is, side by side I want to also show the value of the convective heat transfer coefficient. Annulus also I will erase, because this is some concept I have just discussed. I think students already know all these things. So, this part I want to also plot over here as a function of x, what is the value of the heat transfer coefficient. So, what I want to make the claim over here, that over in this zone the maximum amount of heat transfer coefficient is observed, H is the maximum. So, if I can show this H plot, H I am talking about H, the H plot, if I can show that it starts with low value, it is gradually increasing till this point, it is actually increased over here. Why is it increasing very high? So, please remember that answer, that we have looked at H value for pool boiling. You remember we came up with very big number, 33,000 watts per meter square. So, we will put the units over here. That value for pool boiling shows that compared to any type of forced convection, the boiling heat transfer coefficient is very high. And believe me, in all these zones over here, in zone 2 and 1 also over here, in zone 1, this is zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, all the value of H is actually increasing. Why? Because in each of these zones, huge amount of bubbling is taking place, is not it? You can see these red bubbles I am showing on the edge, where the actual nucleation sites are there, and later on it will be replaced by film boiling. So, later on we will replace it like this over here. So, we will start having some dry spots in the zone number 5. So, zone number 5 I will write as the transition zone. This is the transition zone. And the last one I will write, zone number 6, is the mist zone. In transition zone, what will happen is, some portions will become dry out. By dry out, what do we mean? That this whole portion which is shown in blue color over here and here, this is still liquid in touch with the solid surface, like over here. So, all this is liquid. Maybe I will show the dry out region in yellow color, just to illustrate it better. I hope students can see this yellow color over here, and this is very detrimental for the pipe. Why is it very detrimental for the pipe? Because in between of the liquid zone, there is some sort of the dry out zone over there. There the pipe temperature will shoot up very high. How will it shoot up? Please remember that delta T thing, that from critical heat flux, you remember it was sudden jump to the film transition. So, amount of delta T was from 30 degree to 600 degree, that is huge value. So, over here it will be even worse, because in transition that 600 degree is actually moving very fast here and there. Transition means that it is neither this, neither that, both are happening at different times. Then suddenly it is this, suddenly it is that. So, it is like if I am watching television, maybe I am watching Hindi news, then I am in the Hindi zone, then I am watching English news, I am in that zone. But if some friend comes and I am just doing the flickering of the channel, suddenly this channel, that channel, then somebody asks him that what channel am I watching, he will clearly say that I do not know, it is a transition between various channels that I am doing. So, this transition zone is some sort of transition between nucleate and flow film boiling, where a lot of rapid change is taking place. So, over here also this dry spot which is there, it will keep on moving around. Then what happens in the mist flow, everything will be dry. Why? Because the liquid is only remaining in some droplets over here. So, what is mist? We have all seen mist around us. So, it is just small droplets which is moving around in the air, that is the mist over there. And what is the all the volume occupied by over here? So, I am just putting these green dots over here just to illustrate the point that all of this has become water vapor now. So, in the mist zone it is almost fully water vapor, just few droplets of water are still remaining. So, now let us correlate what we have learned over here. What happens in the transition zone? It has to go down suddenly over here, and then suddenly it will increase over here as well, which means we started with low value of H on the very extreme left side zone 1, we end also with very low value of H on the right hand side of this particular zone. So, if you ask that surface that which type of heat transfer it will give the best result, I think the answer will be this middle zone over here, all the zones in which the liquid is actually in touch with the pipe surface. What it means is that whether we are in the annular zone, whether we are in slug zone or in bubbly zone, then the liquid is always in touch with the pipe surface throughout. So, liquids can carry lot of amount of heat, change phase, become bubbles, and then start accumulating toward the middle. But the example which is given over here, it clearly illustrates that flow boiling is very complex phenomena, because huge amount of phase change is taking place. It is not single phase, it is double phase, turbulence will be there. Lot of modes of heat transfer could be there. If temperature of the pipe is very high, radiation will also play a huge role. So, with that analysis, I want to I think move on to the next topic, because in boiling things can become very complicated. So, just for your understanding, I have explained it by taking so much time. Now, we look at another interesting topic, which is the reverse of boiling. So, if I ask you, so the phase change, if we are taking place from liquid to solid, from liquid to vapor, then it is boiling. Can the reverse take place? So, if we can condense the water vapor, we will be able to achieve liquid. So, if I ask you a question that where have we seen condensation take place all around us? So, I think we all remember, if we take out some cold material from our fridge at very low temperature and put it in this room over here, then suddenly we see some sort of a droplets which actually form over there. So, I have put some figures, and we all remember that if we take out a cold bottle like this from the fridge, put it outside, then these type of droplets are formed, and those droplets, some image, zoomed image is also given over here. Like we can see over here that these are things which can see. So, these are the droplets that we can see taking place, this type of condensation inside our house with the application that I talked about. What about that cloud image that we are seeing? So, these type of condensation take place in the nature itself. So, when water vapor, it rises after evaporation from the ocean and from all the water bodies on around us, from rivers, lakes, etc., and transpiration through trees also, all that water vapor, it rises, and at one point it condenses around some particulate material, it forms the cloud. So, these are things we have known from our childhood. Let us look at another interesting image. So, this is another concept of condensation, and these we have also seen when we look upward in the sky. Sometimes aeroplane is passing by, and these type of contrails, which is the short form of condensation trails. We have also seen in nature, and it is very interesting phenomena that all the water vapor which is actually being exhausted by the engine over here, as well as some water vapor which is present in the atmosphere, just because some particles are also being emitted by the engine. So, for condensation, the main criteria is that certain amount of impurity or a solid surface actually is needed. So, if inside a room which is ultra pure and we just fill it with water vapor and reduce the temperature below the saturation temperature, the water vapor by itself in the vapor form, it will not know how to condense. It requires some sort of a solid material. So, if I have a cold solid material over here, like we have seen in the previous example, this solid surface of the plastic bottle or this solid surface on the right hand side over here, then the water vapor can condense very nicely. But when it is coming out from the exhaust of the jet engine, over there it is able to find certain soot particles. So, all our engines and especially gas turbine, IC engine, diesel engine, they emit some sort of soot particles. So, on the soot particles immediately that condensation takes place, which is why we see these beautiful contrails, and the temperatures at that altitude, if the aircraft is flying let us say at 30,000 feet, the temperature could be even -40, -50 °C centigrade. Then not only it condenses, after that it also solidifies. So, there becomes some ice particles over there, and that is what the reflection of the sunlight that we are seeing over here. So, huge amount of scattering is taking place and we see it in white color. Another interesting image for the same contrail is that it is even visible from the space. So, we can see some very faint contrails over here, here and here. I think it is in the Baltic Sea. So, huge amount of aircraft movement is taking place in this region. So, all this part is the natural condensation because of nature, and these are the man-made condensations at very high altitude. This image is I think taken by NASA website. So, it is perhaps from one of the satellites they have taken this image. Now, having looked at all these examples in our life, in our house as well as in the nature, very beautiful examples, let us look at the physics behind condensation. So, if we ask some question to the thermodynamic engineer that what are some equipment inside which condensation takes place. So, we can again draw the TS diagram for the Rankine cycle or a power plant. Again we can immediately show over here. So, I can put some numbers over here, let us say this is state 1, 2, then we have 3, 4, 5, 6. So, 5 to 6 is the expansion in the turbine, and then 6 to 1 is the one which is the condenser over here. So, clearly condensation takes place from saturated vapor from this side to saturated liquid on this side. So, this is one of the big examples of condensation taking place, but for this to watch this we have to go several kilometers to find a power plant. Is there some condenser which is available nearby? So, if we have air conditioner unit over here, so definitely outside the house there is the condenser unit over there. So, we can draw, this was the power cycle. We can also draw the refrigeration cycle. So, in refrigeration cycle we can very clearly see that if I draw the TS diagram for that also. So, there we will have the refrigerant dome, and this one cycle is kind of reversed. So, we can show with the help of arrows over here that it is going in the anti-clockwise direction, and I can put some numbers over here. So, thermodynamic engineers are very familiar with it, but those who have not studied it before, I can just share over here that from point 2 to point 3 is the condenser over here. So, superheated refrigerator at state 2 is condensed up till state 3. So, this unit is usually present outside the house. So, if let us say I can draw a very not a very good sketch. So, let me draw it again. So, let us say we have this indoor space over here and that we are trying to cool. So, there will be a heat transfer unit which is inside placed over here. It will be connected to another unit which is usually outside over here. So, this outside unit is the one which is the condenser. and its purpose is actually, we will study in the next lecture, next chapter, that it is kind of a very good heat exchanger. It is actually taking in air over here, which was originally cold, and then heating this air and taking that coolness of the air in order to condense the refrigerant from state 2 to state 3. So, this is very interesting thing which is taking place. So, inside the pipes the refrigerant is actually condensing, and we have seen that some sort of solid surface is actually needed. So, those things now we will study in more detail. If we start looking at the background technical details of this, so if we want to write the condition at which condensation will take place is, so we have to have a solid surface which is at much lower temperature than the saturated temperature of that particular fluid. So, it is just as the reverse of the boiling phenomena which has taken place earlier. So, let us say if we are having a fluid inside this particular room, there is already water vapor which is present over there. In addition to that, we have oxygen and nitrogen as well. Now, the saturation temperature of oxygen and nitrogen is very low, which means I need very low temperature. So, I can't condense them as a demonstration. In principle, I can condense them, but at not the ordinary temperatures. But if I want to give demonstration to some students, I can bring a very cold surface and then put it in this room, assuming there is already water vapor inside over here, and depending on the temperature of the room, its relative humidity as well, and the temperature of this surface, if this condition is met true, then certain condensation will take place over here. So, let us say I know the room temperature of the room, and I also know the relative humidity phi. So, relative humidity is denoted by this symbol phi over here. So, based on this I can calculate the value of saturation temperature. So, this again is familiar to thermodynamic engineers. So, let us say I calculate the value of saturation temperature. That saturation temperature turns out to be 20 degrees. I am just taking this as an example, which means if I bring a surface in this room which is about 35 degrees, yani it is higher than 20 degree. For why am I taking 35? Because my skin is at approximately 35, the cloth which is in contact with the skin both are at 35 degrees centigrade. So, my surface temperature is higher than the saturated temperature which is 20 degree, which means because 35 is greater than 20, no condensation will take place over here, right. But if I bring an object from the fridge which will have temperature much lower, let us say 8 degrees or 9 degrees, on that surface condensation can take place over here, because it meets this particular criteria inside this equation. So, this is a very good way of looking at the criteria if condensation takes place or not. Now, let us look at what are the different type of condensations which take place. So, primarily we can have two type of condensation: film condensation and drop wise condensation. Just to begin with this topic over here, drop wise is the one which is more preferred, because it has typically heat transfer coefficient for the drop wise could be as high as 10 times that of the heat transfer coefficient of the film based condensation. So, if I know the heat transfer coefficient for film based condensation, if the same thing were to happen in the different regime drop wise, then I would expect 10 times higher value of H. So, even just by looking at this equation, not knowing what is film and what is droplet, I would prefer to have droplet wise condensation. The only trouble in reality is that it is very difficult to maintain it for long period of time. So, on a fresh surface I can have drop wise condensation to begin with, but later on very quickly it turns to film condensation. So, even though this is the more desired one, in almost all practical applications we end up having film condensation. So, in both cases, let me draw a surface over here. So, this is the cold surface that we are talking about. So, both are maintained at some temperature T s. If drop wise condensation would take place, then essentially we will see some droplets form over here, if the film condensation is taking place, that once these droplets have actually formed, then the whole thing flows down like a film shown over here. So, this moves down with velocity v. So, essentially things may start with drop wise condensation, but if the droplet all coalesce together, then this whole becomes like a thick film and then it flows downwards. The same thing can happen on tubes as well. So, let us say condensation is taking place on this tube. So, some sort of film is formed over here as well. So, this is another example of film type condensation. What we can do is look at the simplest case, which is this vertical plate. So, if we have a vertical plate, then certain expressions are actually available which give us the value of h for vertical plate. Okay. Now, I might warn the students, these expressions may look very complicated, but do not worry, because generally these are obtained empirically. So, boiling and condensation is one of those topics where lot of things are actually unknown and the uncertainties are usually very high. So, in this particular case, one of the correlations which is given is like this. If I want to calculate for film condensation, what is the expression of h, then we get something like this. Do not try to memorize it, it is very long, just try to understand what these parameters actually mean. So, what we are trying to do over here is try and understand that in a very long equation like this, what does this thing tell us at first instance? That both boiling, condensation, because boiling also has long equations like this, these are very complex phenomena, where phase change is taking place, some amount of turbulence is there inside over there. There are various ways of heat transfer which are taking place over there. Now, you can see lot of subscripts which are written over here. All the things with the small subscript L stand for the liquid part, subscript V stand for the vapor part. So, I think some things are very self evident, those things we can do very quickly, like G is the gravitational constant, then density of liquid, density of liquid, density of vapor. What is mu L? So, this is the dynamic viscosity of liquid. L is the characteristic length of that particular wall. Tsat, Ts values we know, this is saturation temperature of the fluid and the surface temperature over here. Kl stands for the thermal conductivity of the liquid, and what is this HFG? Usually it is the enthalpy, and over here we can define it like this. So, HFG star is defined as the latent heat of vaporization, but we have modified it a little. So, this is defined as modified latent heat of vaporization. This is what HFG stands for, and it is written as the simple HFG, which is the latent heat of vaporization without the star, plus 0.68 CPL times multiplied by Tsat minus Ts. So, I think with the help of these things we can figure out in certain cases what is the value of H for condensation taking place in film form, and I will just write over here the easy expressions for the condensation which is taking place in the drop wise condensation. And this is for condensation taking place on copper surface, because the surface characteristic is also very important. So, there are two cases in which the values can be given. In this case, it is almost 50,000 plus 2044 multiplied by Tsat, and in another case it is 2,55,310. So, it turns out to be a constant, very nice value. And what is the case 1? So, this is the case 1 where T sat is greater than 100 degree centigrade. So, when is usually at 1 atmosphere, water is having more than 100 degree, it means we are condensing steam on that copper tube, superheated steam we are condensing. So, just look at the value of H, it is huge. All these units are, by the way, watts per meter square Kelvin. And this is the case where T sat is greater than 22 degrees. So, we have looked at very good correlations for the drop wise as well as the film condensation, and we have looked at several examples of the condensation which is taking place around us. We have looked at various thermodynamic examples also where condensation is taking place, and these are of course very nice images available from NASA, which shows the contrails visible from space. This is the contrails, or known as the condensation trails, which is available, which is visible from the ground surface itself. We can look up and see many times that the aircraft is flying, then we see very beautiful contrails. Then we also see these images all around us. So, with that I like to conclude. We have looked at different regimes of boiling. We started off with the natural convection part, the nucleate, transition, film boiling, and we looked at for both the cases in detail, the pool boiling as well as the flow boiling. And we looked at very interesting concept of the surface roughness of the solid, that how many nucleation zones are available, which actually enhance the amount of heating taking place. Then the critical heat flux, the highest heat flux in which the nucleate zone is remaining. If you want to go higher than that, we have to go into film boiling, and usually we want to avoid that, because just because the x axis, the surface temperature has to be so high in that particular case. Then we looked in the details of the opposite of boiling, which is condensation, and we looked at two different cases. One is the droplet wise and the film wise condensation, and we looked at certain correlations as well. I think with that we have looked at sufficiently at these two topics, and I would like to conclude today's lecture. When we meet next, we will look at a new topic. We will perhaps start heat exchangers, which is also very fascinating topic. With that, I thank you all. Thank you.